Good evening and welcome to March 13th, 2018 San Bruno City Council meeting. Vicki, would you be so kind as to take roll?
Councilmember Medina.
Here.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Here.
Councilmember Salazar.
Here.
Vice Mayor Davis.
Here.
Mayor Medina.
Here. May I ask our city attorney to lead us in the pledge, please, this evening? We have three announcements this evening. First, the City of San Bruno, along with Group 4, the architects, will be holding its first public engagement meeting for the development of the conceptual design for the new Recreation and Aquatic Center. The meeting will be held on Thursday, March 22nd, 6:30 p.m. at the Veterans Memorial Recreation Center in the City Park. An informal open house will also be held that same day, also at the Rec Center at 3 p.m. Please come by to meet, share your ideas about this exciting new project. And of course, it is just about that time, but for our Easter, and the annual pancake breakfast and Easter egg hunt will be held on Saturday, March 24th from 9 to 11 at the San Bruno City Park, and the Easter egg hunt will promptly begin at 10:30 a.m. Also, just to update the community, since 1985, the City of San Bruno has enjoyed a sister city partnership with the City of Narita, Japan. As part of this partnership, each year, the City of San Bruno and the San Bruno Park School District hosts a delegation of Narita Junior High students who spend almost a week in our community for a fun and educational opportunity to learn more about a new culture. Students from Parkside School visit Narita each summer for a similar experience. This year, our visitors will arrive on March 23rd. We welcome our guests with open arms and hope that they will find their visit to the U.S. and to the City of San Bruno in particular rewarding and very worthwhile. Moving on to presentations, we do not have any. Moving on to consent. Vicki?
All items are considered routine or implement an earlier council action and may be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion unless requested.
Councilman Medina.
I had a question from someone from the audience this evening regarding the senior center deck that is finished, that's on the consent agenda. The budget or the expenditure on the project was $189,339, and it was $10,411 under budget. So if you get a chance to take a look at it, it's very, very nice. So
With that, move to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Ayes have it. Obviously, there are no public hearings this evening. There is no report of committee, commissions, or boards. Vicki, public comment?
Public comment. It is the council's policy to refer matters raised in this forum to staff for investigation and/or action where appropriate. The Brown Act prohibits the council from discussing the act or acting upon any matter not agendized pursuant to law.
Any speaker cards, Vicki?
No, just one for an item already on the agenda. So.
Is there anybody from the audience that wishes to speak on something not on the agenda this evening? If not, Vicki, let's proceed to conduct of business.
Conduct of business, item 9A, adopt resolution initiating property owner notice and protest process as required by Proposition 218 for fiscal year 2018-19 garbage rate increase proposed by Recology San Bruno.
Mr. Leary.
Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, Recology San Bruno has requested an interim year rate adjustment in accordance with their franchise agreement with the city. Based on a change in the CPI index, between January 2017 and December of 2017, and increased contractual landfill disposal costs at Ox Mountain Landfill form the basis of this interim adjustment request. The request for this year, a totals being recommended to you is 2.45%. This adjustment blends 80% of the change in CPI and the percentage increase in disposal costs at Ox Mountain as a pass-through in the amount of 2.33%. So the net calculation for 2018-19 is the 2.45% adjustment. Changes as a result of this request for a 32-gallon residential toter is a 72-cent increase from $29.37 to $30.09. This change, based on existing rates with comparator cities, a total of 15 other locales are included in the staff report. With this change, San Bruno would remain, again, right exactly at the median of all of the cities. We would be ranked 8th out of the 16, and over many years, with rate changes that the city itself has implemented, the city has remained right at that midpoint of all of these agencies. The figures that are presented for other agencies do not include any other increases that might take effect in those locales July 1st. Actions after tonight. The action proposed by the council is consideration of the proposed rate increases, and in particular the property owner notice under Proposition 218 that is attached to the staff report. It would be our intent, if the council gives us direction, to get this in the mail. I think the 25th of March is the drop dead date that we need to get that in the mail. There is no specific council approval of the rates tonight. That would take place at a later time, where the city council would hold a public hearing, consider any protests under the 218 process, and take action on new ordinance. May 8th would be the schedule for that particular action, and then there would be a second reading May 22nd, where the actual rates would be approved if the council so desired. Just the last points I would make, the City Council Ad Hoc Garbage Committee met last Thursday. Councilmember Salazar and Marty Medina met and reviewed the matter with Recology, and I would ask them to make comments as far as a recommendation or direction that they would propose. Would also point out the obvious, that Kirsten is here from Recology, and she could further answer any questions that the council has. With that, I conclude my remarks and be glad to answer any question the council has.
Questions or comments from council? Kirsten, did you want to address or say anything, or after? No. Yeah. Okay. Please.
So this rate increase is part of the contract that Recology is allowed to request. And this action is just following through the process of allowing the residents, the customers, to provide a objection. It's very, very hard to get, but it is the law, and that's what we're doing tonight to allow the notifications to go out.
I would say yes to both. The franchise agreement calls for processes for annual increases for covering the cost of providing the service. Those are either in detailed years or in interim years. Last year was an interim year. This year is an interim year. Next year is a detailed year where there is a specific and in-depth review of all expenditures in order to determine the amount of revenue that the service is allowed. So next year is a detailed year. The notice to ratepayers that you described is not part of the franchise. That's part of Proposition 218, and that 218 actually became law about 10 years after the franchise. And so it's a process that we've added since that time to allow residents to get notice, as you indicated.
Any other questions or comments or action from council?
I think you have a question.
Oh, I apologize, Robert.
I didn't fill out a form yet. Robert Rico
okay.
on 7th Avenue. In the past, I think you had some discussion on whether the notices would go to property owners and renters, so that the people that were actually paying would get the information. I thought in the past, did the notices only go to the registered property owners?
City Manager?
So according to Proposition 218, it's property owners who have the ability to protest. But Mr. Reichel is correct. We were previously requested to send both to property owners as well as to property occupants, renters. And then the City Council can decide how you want to evaluate the results of that solicitation. It is about another, it's a great deal of work to separate them out. So property owners who live in their properties here in San Bruno, owner-occupied premises would probably receive two pieces of mail, and renters would receive one, and then owners, non-occupant owners would receive one for the same property. So it is a little bit of double doing, but we're happy to do that.
Subcommittee have any comments, or did this come up in dialogue?
It didn't.
Okay. Any thoughts from council in regards to this topic?
Oh,
Please, Irene.
thank you.
Laura.
I'd like clarification. So the people who are renting, even though they may be paying the utility bill, really don't have the right to deny it or to vote against it or protest it? But they would but what you're suggesting is that we give, not you're suggesting, the suggestion out there is that we give them a notice anyway? Is that correct?
Yes. So I'll ask.
The short answer is yes.
The short
Okay.
answer is yes. So I'll ask the city attorney to correct anything I say that's incorrect. But Proposition 218 is fundamentally about property-related fees and charges. And so in an abundance of caution, as the staff report indicates, we have included garbage rates under our as something that we notice property owners about. And again, under the law, those are the individuals, that is who the law addresses. So to send also, and it is correct that in the city of San Bruno, we do provide garbage service. We do allow tenants to subscribe for garbage service. We don't require that garbage service be subscribed by the property owner. So in some cases where the property is rented, it's the tenant or the renter who is actually directly incurring the cost. And I believe that is the reason that this consideration for providing notice to tenants and owners came up. Now, when it comes to a protest, Proposition 218 says if you receive more than 50%, if you receive 50% plus one protest through this process, you are precluded from implementing the rate increase. However, at less than 50% protest, it's your discretion how you want to handle that public feedback.
Okay, thank you. Part of the reason I'm asking is Recology already sent out a notice of proposal rate increases, correct? That was in the utility, or is this the one you're proposing to send out? Okay, so in our packet, there's a proposed utility rate increase notice that
Right,
goes with
and that's mailed by the city,
Right.
and not by Recology.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's, okay. So that goes with the utility bill? Or with the,
The one in the packet that we have made up that's a draft is what the city will mail, not in the bill, but as a
As
specific 218 notice,
okay, okay, just
which
checking.
is what we've done year to year in this manner. So it's a separate mailing and not part of the bill.
Okay.
And if I may, through the chair, sorry to interrupt, it is important for the public to know that regardless of how many notices their property receives, the property owner might get a notice, one tenant, two tenant, five tenants might get a notice. The fact is that under Proposition 218, there's only one vote per parcel.
Thank you.
And
The reason
the
I'm
property
asking,
owner has to cast that vote.
the reason I was asking, I was wondering how confusing it might be if what you just said happened, that 5 tenants get, each tenant in a 5-unit apartment get a notice, and they are under the impression that they get to vote no or yes or whatever, but in reality they don't. So I don't know if it's necessary that we do that. Just my thought.
I was just going to ask if we can mail the property owners a separate mailer, but since we're not required to mail to the subscribers who are not property owners, can we just do a bill insert or a bill message?
Yes, we could. I don't know that it would not probably be practical to include the whole of the notice. It's several pages, but we could refer people via a bill insert. Tell me if you disagree. But I believe we could include a bill, no. Timing is
I think
yeah.
the bigger issue might be, and it would depend on exactly how the cycles fall, but we're required to give 45 days notice, and if it was in bill inserts, I'm not sure there were going to be 2 mailings
Yeah.
in this exact time, so it may or may not be doable.
Excellent point.
We could include, if you're comfortable with that, we could include a bill insert that just simply refers people to a more detailed explanation, both about the dates and the amounts. Since, as Councilmember O'Connell points out, you wouldn't at that point be soliciting their participation in the Proposition 218 process, but just simply providing a means of additional information targeted to the ratepayers. We could refer them to materials on the website with a little bit of specific information about how to inform yourself about it.
Right, I mean, if the council directed, I mean, we could make that notice, and it is for many years now been posted on the city website for these number of weeks in the meantime, and we could make clear that this is a notice that's going to property owners, but at least they would know that as a tenant what their property owner is involved in if you wanted us to do that.
Other comments from council?
Through the chair.
Please, Mike.
So just a point of clarification. So if we were to send the notice to only ratepayers, we potentially could miss some property owners, and then that would run us afoul of
That would not be
218.
consistent with Proposition 218. Proposition 218 requires the mailed notice and the opportunity to protest to property owners.
The property.
So we would need to do
even
that
if those property
regardless.
owners don't pay the rate, so
Correct.
which is
That's correct.
Yeah, so it's a little unusual. Okay.
It is the same with our our other utility rates, water and wastewater rates as well.
That's true.
Same issue.
They may not be ratepayers either.
They may not be ratepayers, correct.
Interesting, okay.
So action from council, the one thing I hear is potentially putting in a insert into the regular utility billing. I'm not hearing a consensus in which to mail to all ratepayers and property owners. Is that, but this is what I've heard.
That would be my preference. I would prefer that every ratepayer were notified.
So you'd like to go to all property owners and all ratepayers?
To the property owners to be consistent with the law, and to the ratepayers to be consistent with the spirit of the law, which is to allow the people that pay the fee to have an opinion, or to state an opinion.
So are you talking about a utility billing insert, or are you talking about the 7-page document that the property owner is going to receive, so that that will give them the impression that they can have a vote and vote no, but it
I don't
won't
think it
be
ever
counted?
applies. They don't really get a vote. They're allowed to protest. And only if it hits that 50% margin would it have any legal requirement.
Is staff going to have to take and separate these out from property owners to ratepayers? Do we not know that? Or do we know how that would operate? Or does it do what Mr. Salazar said as far as if it got to a 50% threshold?
Are you referring to the responses or to the mailed notices?
Responses.
Responses, we check those against property records anyway, so the answer is yes, we would check any response that we receive, any protest. We always report all protests received to the city council. We would segregate those by qualified property owners and others.
Thank you.
And that's something we would do anyway.
Okay. Council looking for direction.
I would introduce the resolution with the adjustment that we would notify all ratepayers.
By the same type of document that, just so
Yes.
staff's clear. Okay.
Councilmember Salazar,
Aye.
Councilmember Medina,
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Davis,
Object.
Mayor Medina.
No. Okay, the resolution passes 3-2, so that, just so we're clear on the direction, in case staff needs further, that a notice will be sent to every ratepayer, the 7-page document, and every property owner, and will be mailed out, or however many pages it is. Was that understood and that works? Thank you. And now, Kirsten, please.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. When I met with the ad hoc committee last Thursday, I brought to the attention of an issue that's going on in San Bruno and a program that Recology is going to have to move forward with. So they asked if I can come and describe what's going to be happening to the rest of everyone. So late in 2017, as most people heard, the air quality in China began to decline, or had been declining for some time, and the China Ministry of Environmental Protection decided to finally take some action. So what they've done is they implemented what's called the National Sword, and beginning in January, China would stop accepting recyclable materials that had a contamination of less than 1%, about 0.5%. That took a huge effect on the population because we do export most of our recycling to China for processing. So what started in San Bruno, what we had to do is let me describe the process. You put your cart out on the curb, Recology comes and picks up the blue cart, dumps it in the truck. Then they drive the truck to our transfer station, dump it on the floor. A loader operator then scoops up the recycling and puts it into a long-haul semi-truck that is then transports it to a recycling processor. We currently use one in San Jose. So what started happening in January is our processor started taking a hard look at all the loads and started rejecting them and saying, your recycling material is too contaminated. We are not going to give you recycling monies for that, and we are also going to charge you to dump this as garbage. So it's kind of a double hit on the financials. So immediately, my team came together and we just said, okay, we have to clean up our recycling. What can we do in the immediate? So what we had to do was all the drivers are taking a hard look at the blue can, and on the route, if the blue can is highly contaminated right now, they are dumping the blue can as garbage. So that is increasing the garbage. It's decreasing our diversion, but it's keeping the recycling, the clean recycling in the trucks clean, and allowing for us not to get rejected contamination loads at the processor. That is not a sustainable method moving forward. So what we have to do is we're working on two things. We're working on a newsletter that we're going to send to all residents and apartment owners and commercial customers that's going to describe the problem in China, and it's going to describe our process that we're going to do moving forward. So once we have identified or notified all of the residents and everyone about this program, our drivers are going to start tagging the blue carts that are highly contaminated. So they're going to tag it with a sticker tag, which is extremely sticky. We're still working on the design because we want to make sure it's very legible and understandable to the resident. We are going to dump it as garbage like we are now, but we're also going to identify the problem. We're going to give them alternatives on where they can put those items somewhere else, and also let them know that the next time it's contaminated, there will be a charge for dumping the cart as garbage. What we're finding, and not only San Bruno, but recently Sacramento also just published an article, a lot of customers are using their blue cart as their overflow for their full garbage can. So we have either customers doing that, or we have customers that don't know if a certain item is recyclable, because programs are different all over. So our goal is to really change the customer's behavior. At the same time, we need to clean up our recycling that's being sent to the processor. So again, we will notify every resident and commercial customer with a newsletter describing the problem in China and what Recology is doing about it. And then we will give them a start date on when we will start dumping their blue cans as garbage and tagging them. And then, oh, and I forgot to mention, I'm sorry. Once a customer gets a tag on their blue cart, Recology's customer service team will also follow up with a letter. So we want to make sure that the customers are duly and substantially notified that there was a problem with their cart. So we're trying to notify them as much as possible before them having to incur the charge. Jim, did I miss anything? Besides breathing? Are there questions about this process or that I can answer for any of you?
Before I turn to the council, just two questions. Obviously, there's a warning, and then it's tagged, and then there's an economics to it. What is that?
What are the economics? The economics is going to be, we tried to use something that was already in the rate structure, and in the rate structure, we have a charge for an extra 32-gallon bag, and the 64-gallon blue carts are 64 gallons, so it's twice that fee. So it's going to be $27.60 currently before the rate increase.
And then is there going to be other communications other than just in English for the
It's going to
community?
be in English and Spanish. Thank you for pointing that out.
Thank you. Questions from council? Michael?
Through the chair, thank you. Will the mailer that goes out with the rate adjustments, will that include some language indicating that there will be that new, well, it's not really a new fee, but just an explanation of that's going to be, that
Yes.
will be implemented going
Yes,
forward?
and we would be happy to share the newsletter with the council and staff before we send it out if there's anybody wants to chime in. We're being very thoughtful in the information we put in there. We're being very descriptive, and there will be actually a picture of this card when it's finished in the newsletter. So when they do receive it, it won't be the first time they've seen it. And then the other side will also talk about places they can take clothing, plastic bags. We're trying to find a location for all the contaminants, and it'll have our website, and it'll also remind the customers that they can subscribe to a larger cart, a garbage cart as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions from council?
Through the chair. So I would assume that you're going to have a lot of customers who are just not clear about what I can and can't, and then disputing the fact that, well, I thought my recycling was pretty clean. Why am I getting charge this extra even though I got this warning. I got this warning and I did better, but it wasn't good enough. So how can we better educate the residents? Because, everywhere I go, whether it's recycling or compost or garbage, everybody's confused. I mean, I would say 8 out of 10 residents and customers and people I work with, they're all confused. And I'm constantly having to educate. So I think the education part of it is going to be really important.
I agree. We also in the ad hoc committee talked about doing a video segment on cable TV. And when we interviewed all of our residential drivers and asked them the things that they saw the most in contamination. And I'm not talking if someone has, a dirty bottle in their blue, that we're not going to tag that. We are seeing lots of clothing, diapers, wood, things that are not recyclable in our program. They're not a plastic or a paper or a glass. So they're really outside the recyclable world. And so those are the carts we're going after. So our standards will be, it has to be extremely contaminated for us to tag it. And we want to change their behavior. We just want to be able to get them to call our office and let us explain what is and is not allowed in the program.
Good to know. I was afraid with leaving some peanut butter in the container I was going to be in trouble. So.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions from council? Thank you very much for the
Okay,
update.
thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next item, please, Vicki. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. O'Leary?
Just to follow up with the Vice Mayor's question, that the unaddressed, the penalties and the rejection of these items over the long term could have an adverse impact on all the ratepayers. So just taking action is an important thing to do.
Yes, Vicki.
9B, receive investment report and adopt resolution approving amendment to the city investment policy.
Mr. O'Leary?
Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, the government code previously required city councils to review annually their city's investment policy. While that is no longer the case coming from the government code, the City of San Bruno's investment policy does require an annual review by the City Council, and in those times when there are any changes to the investment policy for further review and approval by the City Council. The investment policy authorizes and requires conservative investments. It requires monthly investment reports to the City Council and requires investment decisions be consistent with what is termed the prudent investor standard. And essentially, that guideline spells out that the trustee, in which case is now the finance director, shall act with the care, skill, prudence, and diligence of a prudent person in safeguarding principal while maintaining liquidity needs. As of January 2018, the total amount of the city's investment portfolio is a little over $68 million. And page 2 of the staff report, for your information, shows shows the breakdown between the three main components of the portfolio: the local agency investment fund, which is a state investment fund, the San Mateo County pool, and then other United States and agency investments that are held on behalf of the city by our trustee, which is currently Union Bank. The returns on those three segments, the local agency investment fund through the state, the current return is 1.35%. The San Mateo County pool is 1.40%, and a weighted average of the individual investments that the city holds through Union Bank is 1.45%. The investment portfolio, the investment policy as included in your packet is redlined, showing proposed changes in the wording, and there's two primary aspects of the changes. The first is merely changing from the city treasurer, clearly indicating the duties throughout the investment policy are now assigned to the finance director, and that is based on the treasurer position being eliminated in December 2017 at the expiration of the then incumbent's term. The other change, slightly more substantive, since the Great Recession period of around 2008, 2009, the investment policy included, in order to ensure diversification of the portfolio, of the overall portfolio, it set target for investments to split equally in those three segments to 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, which was essentially 33% for LAIF, 33% for the county pool, and 33% for city-held investments. And that's been unchanged since that time. In the last 10 years, those targets have remained. It would be staff's recommendation of, while the council is updating the policy, that there be some consideration to a slight modification of those targets, and that is really driven by the lagging performance of LAIF at this particular point. The county pool and our city-owned investment portfolio are both performing at higher levels than LAIF, and in talking to people, sort of the projection for the next year is that LAIF would continue to lag. So just to continue this 1/3, 1/3, not probably a material change, but I think while the council is reviewing it, it would make some sense to consider retargeting a little bit, lowering LAIF. And so there is a recommendation within the policy that the county pool and the city health securities be at 38% as a target rather than 33%, and that LAIF be lowered to 24% rather than 33%. And again, it would be our recommendation that next year, when the council reviews this, if the investment environment is different, that be reordered again. And I would just point out that these are in the policy clearly spells out that these are targets. At any particular moment, we're probably not right at the target. It depends on when securities mature and when we get a large property tax payment into the county pool. At any particular moment, the portfolio might not exactly match the target, but the point is then that staff begin moving the portfolio to be in compliance with those targets. So those are that is the current investment portfolio, and relatively minor changes to the policy, and I'd be glad to answer any questions that the council has.
Any questions of council? Michael?
Through the chair, thank you. Mr. Lear, can you clarify one point? And in the actual document, it specifies that funds connected with the settlement agreement with PG&E are not part of the policy. But in the table that's attached, it shows the breakdown. There is something that says Glenview Fire Local Agency investment. Is there? It seemed like those were related.
It is in fact invested in LAIF.
Okay.
And you can see by the portfolio, it's actually broken out because there's two different percentages. But it is in fact in LAIF. I think the policy allows for something different as a possibility, but as a practical matter, it has, and to my knowledge, has always been invested in LAIF.
Okay. So maybe we could clear up that language in there so that it because it sounds like we shouldn't be including it in the policy, but it is covered by the policy. And maybe the distinction was what the foundation is managing versus what, and so maybe we should be clear that it's the foundation money that's not covered by the policy.
When the city was holding that, that was not invested in LAIF. So I think that is in fact the distinction, and if you'd like that cleared up, I think we can make that distinction in the policy.
City Manager?
Yeah, we did hold those monies for a fairly significant period of time, so I'm guessing that that's just a holdover from that period of time. But we can research it and make any necessary corrections.
I think it would make sense to
I agree.
clarify that for future councils to consider. And since we're cleaning up the language in here from the treasurer to now the finance manager, I just wanted to ask if how the transition of those duties has been for you, and do you anticipate any other changes coming, anything else that we'll have to address in the future as part of that transition?
I would say the transition has gone well. I mean, I have had this responsibility in the past and elsewhere. I actually look forward to the opportunity to actually introduce the council. Some of you may have been in City Hall and met her, but the city's new financial services manager in the finance department that began in November has actually worked in the past for both the San Mateo County Investment Pool and the Contra Costa Investment Pool. So she brings a lot of knowledge to further my own. So I think the comfort level, and I think the transition is seamless. And just if it gives you any assurance, I didn't want to make this propose this change to the investment policy diversification targets without checking with the former treasurer. So I did contact him, and he endorsed this change, so I went forward.
Wonderful. Thank you for that.
Other questions from council? If not, it is an action item.
I'll introduce the resolution for approval.
Councilmember Salazar,
Aye.
Councilmember Medina,
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Davis,
Aye.
Mayor Medina.
Aye.
Item 9C, adopt resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a construction contract with Bear Electrical Solutions, Inc. for the streetlight pole replacement project in the amount of $247,100, approving a construction contingency of $49,420, appropriating $71,230 from the Measure A fund balance, and approving a total budget in the amount of $321,230.
Director Chan.
Right. Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. Over the years, the city has used different material types for the streetlight poles, such as concrete, steel, cast iron, and aluminum. And as these poles age and through prolonged exposure to the environment, deficiencies start to form. So back in 2015, when the council approved the agreement with Tenco Lighting for the conversion of the streetlight fixtures to LED, one of the scope items was to perform the assessment of the streetlight, determine its conditions and whether it should be replaced. And all of the 2,100 streetlights were assessed by the firm as well as the city staff. And 680 poles were identified to be deficient and recommended to be replaced. So some of these older concrete poles have cracks due to the length of the pole, and most of the steel and cast iron poles are rusted and have holes in them due to extensive exposure to the environment. So here's just some pictures that we have of the concrete poles. You can see in the Pacific Heights neighborhood there. These concrete poles have an expected lifespan of about 50 years, and the majority of these concrete poles are nearly 70 years old. And their poles are heavier than the average aluminum poles, and their weight creates potential hazards if they're structurally compromised. So the city current standard pole material is aluminum, which has an expected lifespan of 50 years, and they're more lightweight, rust resistant, and holds up better to the environment. So here's another picture of another pole in the neighborhood, and on the right-hand side, that's the aluminum pole that we're using right now as a city standard. In the 2017-18 CIP, staff included a work plan to replace the deficient streetlight poles. The current project is the beginning phase of the replacement program, and the current project is located at the Pacific Heights neighborhood because some of these poles, concrete poles in the neighborhoods are severely cracked and damaged, and they would be replaced with aluminum poles. And for next fiscal year, staff is anticipating to replace the poles in the areas east of El Camino. So to obtain a contractor for this current project, staff advertised the project last month for bid, and received 2 bids for the project. One price of $247,100, and the other at $337,700. And the engineer's estimate for the project was $222,000. And the lowest bid received was from Bear Electrical Solutions in the amount of $247,100, which is approximately $25,100 higher than the engineer's estimate. So staff reviewed the bid materials and determined that the bid submitted is complete and accurate, and the firm is also a fully licensed electrical contractor. And although the firm has not worked on any of the recent San Bruno projects, their previous work experience includes streetlight maintenance and pole replacement for the city of Fremont, and they also performed some traffic signal electrical projects for the cities of Mountain View, Pacifica, and San Mateo. So based on their experience and performance with other agencies, we determined that the firm meets the qualifications to perform the work. And the scope of work includes the removal and disposal of approximately 36 the concrete poles, installation of foundations if needed, and the installation of new aluminum poles, and also the conduits and wires into the new electrical conduits. In the past, staff also received inquiries from residents requesting the installation of new streetlights, and there are about 6 locations, and all these were evaluated by staff to determine whether there were adequate lighting in the requested locations. And staff concluded that all of these were adequate except for one location, which is between the 5th and 6th Avenue, which we believe that can be improved. So as part of this project, we're recommending to perform installation of a streetlight at the location. So here's a location that I'm talking about. Currently, this is an aerial map showing the streets 5th Avenue and 6th Avenue, as you can see there, and the yellow dot on the screen shows the approximate location of the streetlight poles. And the staff is proposing to install a streetlight at mid-block between the 5th and 6th on the north side of the street. Currently, the installation of the streetlight will require permanent electrical service and coordination with PG&E for the design. And staff is currently recommending to install a new streetlight foundation and a pole, but using a temporary LED as part of this project until a permanent electrical service is constructed. And this temporary option would cost about $10,000, whereas the permanent installation with the new electrical service could cost up to about $40,000. For the project schedule, staff estimates it would take about 3 months to complete the project, and residents in the project area will be notified prior to beginning of any work, and the streetlight service will be interrupted at individual locations until a new pole is fully installed. So for the fiscal year 17-22 CIP budget includes an allocation of $250,000 for the design, bid, and construction phases, and the total cost with the contingency and staff management inspection is approximately $321,230. So staff is requesting an appropriation of $71,230 from Measure A fund to supplement the overall construction phase of the project. And there are currently about $751,000 of unallocated Measure A fund, which is sufficient to fund the requested appropriation. So this concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jimmy. I know we have a speaker card. Do we have council comments or questions, I should say, first, or do we want to hear from the public? Michael, do you want to?
I'll go ahead if that's okay.
Yes, please.
Sure. So, a couple of quick questions, Jimmy. First of all, the report mentions that the deficiencies were discovered during the LED conversion. So, on these poles that are damaged, were they actually upgraded to LEDs in spite of their condition? So, is that part of it done?
The LED conversion has been completed, yes.
Okay. So, does that give us any reasonable amount of assurance that the electrical part of it is up to par and we're not going to run into other issues like we did in some of the neighborhoods where, the wires were, the insulation was gone and they ran into issues. Or is that still a potential risk?
Yeah, I don't believe this location is it's wired as an RO system at Pacific Heights. And I know the city still have RO circuits in our city. I know we converted one recently, the Mills Park neighborhood, and then also the Crestmore neighborhood. But we don't have any idea of the condition of these electrical wires underneath until we start digging up the wires.
Will the pole replacement expose some of that?
They will at the foundation areas. Yeah.
Okay. And as far as, I also noticed that the number of poles that we're replacing is only a small percentage of all of them that were found to be defective. So on an ongoing basis, will the CIP annually include roughly the same amount of budget to continue doing the replacements?
So current year, we have $250,000 budgeted. And then next fiscal year, we're proposing to budget about $400,000. And the year after that, another $400,000. But it's really dependent on council's approval of those budget, but that's something that we need to discuss during the budget study session.
Okay. And so then we could expect that in the next go-around, next year's CIP, we could include the improvements required to make the Fifth Avenue light a permanently wired system rather than the solar.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So lastly, I just wanted to acknowledge the work that the residents in that area did to bring attention to this deficiency, and I know there was a lot of work that happened in the community. So, Mrs. Torres, I wanted to acknowledge the work that you've done in cleaning up your neighborhood and bringing this issue to the city's attention. And I wanted to thank staff for exploring this and bringing back a proposal that we can act on. So, thank you.
Irene, did you have any?
I did. Jimmy, you said it's going to take 3 months, but what is the estimated time it would start?
I would say right now we're in end of March. Once the contract's signed, I'm thinking probably end of April to early May.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. That'll be helpful for people since it'll
Yes.
be lighter longer.
Lauren, did you?
Thank you. 5% of the poles are getting replaced. We need $4.5 to $5 million of funds that we probably have 1.2 million set aside to take care of it. And it's just another example of the cost of trying to maintain an old city. So I keep on bringing up these costs because at some certain point, we have to figure out how to pay for it because we can't. It will take us 20 years to go and replace the current lights that are identified as needing to be replaced. And my concern is if they're been identified as being needing to be replaced, then the liability associated with taking too much time to do so to replace them. Nobody wants to see anybody get hurt. Where we're going to get the money. So we have some very challenging times ahead, and this is something that it's just going to get more expensive as we wait to take care of it. So I'm totally in favor of this project. I echo the efforts and Mrs. Torres for putting this together, and thank you to staff. It's just another example where we have a lot of things to fix and we don't have the funds. So it should be interesting.
Well, let's go ahead and Laura and I'll save our comments for after any public comment. So, Vicki.
Good evening, Mayor Medina, council members, City Manager Jackson. My name is Irving Torres. I'm a resident of 912 Fifth Avenue. And on behalf of the neighbors of 5th Avenue and 6th Avenue, we just want to thank you for this opportunity, for bringing this to this discussion. We really appreciate you all, hoping that you would consider adopting this resolution, hopefully adopting this proposed poll. My mom is my hero, and I know it took her a long time, like since 2011, throughout this process, just to get a street light. That area is very dark, full of debris and, some illegal activities, but, my mom is just very determined, perseverance, and she reminds me of this African proverb, which is, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. And I think that's what my mom represents, and I want to thank the council members for all your help through this process, and, you really do live up by your motto, which is the city with a heart. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ring.
I was just going to say, I concur. I definitely support this program and how important it is to have streetlights in our community that are working. And the city suffered definitely some areas that didn't have that, and safety is the number one concern. So definitely want to just indicate that as well.
Was there anybody else from the public that wanted to speak on this matter? I was also going to just be Mayor, I speak less, which I guess is good for a lot, but Jim or Wayne would miss that. Michael and I had already met with Mrs. Torres, and I'm sorry, did you want to speak?
Yeah, just
Oh,
very-
please.
My name's Kimball Torres. Just to echo what my brother said, I'm also Bernadita Torres' son. Thank you for this opportunity, council, staff members, and public. Just to kind of reiterate what he was talking about, most of the times I come home around 11, 12 p.m., 12 a.m. because of my job and the different things that I do, and it's just really bad there. There's not a lot of lighting. People are, dumping stuff, using it as a public restroom. There's been plenty of opportunities there where I've had to have discussions with certain people who are not even from this city. They're from Fremont, or they're from Millbrae, or they're from San Francisco. They're Uber drivers or the Lyft drivers just there. They might be smoking, they might be drinking. So whatever you guys can do to help us out in the neighborhood, because my mom has done a lot to try and clean up the neighborhood. When we got there before, it was pretty bad. A lot of drug dealers, a lot of different things going on in that community that thankfully my mom gathered the rest of the neighbors together, and we kind of wanted to put a stop to it. And not that the police don't do a great job as well, because they respond very quickly to us, and we appreciate their efforts as well. But as my brother said, if we do want to move forward, it's a community effort. It's not just the people that live there, but the people that we voted in and the people that we asked for support every day. So if we can get this proposal through, it's just another way to show what we can do as a community together. Thank you.
And thank you. And what I was saying was, Mrs. Torres, who I understand when I met with her at City Hall with Councilmember Salazar, that you had embarked upon this task, and then you had to stop for a little bit, and you're back in full action. And what I was most impressed with was it wasn't about for you. It wasn't about for just your home. It was about the neighborhood. It was about a part of the community that you saw a need. And so, as I've always said, and I will continue to say, one person can make a difference, and they do. And you've helped to rally a neighborhood in order to, and what you've done in the letter that I had received when we met, is that not just taking care of the light, but the light and the other elements that you've taken care of, and being very diligent and very dedicated, and very passionate to this city that we all call home. So I personally, as mayor, want to thank you for what you've done in that neighborhood. Action from council.
Through the chair, I would very enthusiastically like to introduce this resolution for approval.
Councilmember Salazar.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Davis.
Aye.
Mayor Medina.
Aye. And again, thank you for bringing this forward.
Item 9D. Sorry.
You're good.
Approve, design, and adopt resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a construction contract with O'Grady Paving, Inc. for the downtown parking lot resurfacing project in the amount of $433,603, approving a construction contingency of $65,040, appropriating $103,039 from the Measure A fund and approving a total budget in the amount of $603,039.
Mr. Tan.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. So the city's downtown area includes 8 off-street public parking facilities with a total of 392 parking spaces. So here's a map that shows of all the parking lots within the close in the proximity of the downtown area. So as part of the ongoing improvements to the city's downtown, in addition to completing the replacement of both the sewer and water pipelines, the parking lots are also being improved for the downtown patrons. The pavement conditions at these majority of the parking lots are in poor condition, and this project would resurface 5 of the 8 parking lots adjacent to Mastic Avenue between Angus and El Camino in the downtown area that have been prioritized to be completed first. So here's some pictures showing the parking lot conditions at the site. So these are the pictures of various different lots going from from El Camino side all the way towards Angus here. There's another picture there as well. So the Sylvan lot, the Angus lot, and the Masson lot, those are in fairly good conditions. I know they're not brand new, but they're not as deteriorated compared to the other 5 lots that were shown on these pictures. So the scope of the work for the project includes milling the existing asphalt surface and overlaying new asphalt and installing new striping. So once completed, the surface will be free from cracked asphalt pavement for downtown patrons to drive and walk. And staff completed the design in-house for this project, and the project was advertised in the newspaper twice last month. And we received 6 bids for the project, and which was opened last month as well on the 26th. And the bid amounts range from approximately $433,600 to $671,000. And the engineer's estimate is $466,000. The lowest bid was received from O'Grady Paving in the amount of $433,603, which was approximately $32,397 lower than the engineer's estimate. And staff reviewed the bid materials and determined that the bid is complete and accurate, and O'Grady Paving has completed numerous projects for public agencies in the Bay Area, including the city of San Bruno as well. So based on their performance and experience, we believe that O'Grady Paving meets the qualifications to perform the work on this project. To minimize the business impact, the specifications require only 1 parking lot to be closed at any given time. Therefore, the contractor is required to complete 1 parking lot before moving on to the next. And the construction hours will be limited from 8 to 5 p.m. and from Monday through Friday, excluding holidays. At the end of each workday, all parking lots will be reopened. And the residents and businesses will be made aware of the construction schedule, impacts from the notices that the department will be sending out, and also the contractor prior to starting the work. For the schedule, staff anticipates starting the construction in the summer of this year after completion of the San Mateo Avenue water and sewer replacement project. And work on the parking lot adjacent to the Plaza apartment is scheduled to begin in the fall of this year as well. And the CIP budget includes an appropriation of $500,000, and the staff is requesting an additional $103,000 for Measure A fund to supplement the additional cost. The total budget includes the design, construction contract, contingency, and as well as staff management and inspection during construction phase for a total project cost of $603,039. And there are unallocated balance in Measure A of $751,000 to supplement the project cost. This concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions of staff? Michael.
Thank you. Jimmy, I think this is great. I think anything that we can do to improve the appearance of our downtown is going to be very much welcome. The question I had is regarding any known utilities that might be underneath these lots that we might want to consider having a look at, make sure that they're good for at least another 10 years before we cover them over with new asphalt. Do you know off the top of your head if there is anything under there that we would consider?
I don't. I would have to check.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it would make sense to, if there is an opportunity to get in there and do something ahead of it. I know it could delay the project, but I would hate to lay down new asphalt and then have to tear it back up if we find that there is something under there that we need to address. The other thing is, in some of the discussions I've heard around downtown parking plan, is that there's a possibility of doing parking meters at some point. So I don't know if that's ever going to happen or not, but would the presence of parking meters require anything different? I mean, would we want to do, I mean, if there was a potential for putting parking meters in, would we want to, I don't know, maybe pre-wire something? A lot of the new parking meters are electronic and they take credit cards. So if we were to take advantage of something like that, would we want to consider putting something in place?
What I've seen in other agencies are, they have number of stalls, and number markers on these stalls, as well as a solar unit for these the parking units, right, where they pay. And so I don't believe that there will be additional conduits or electrical services needed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Irene?
I was just trying to look up the name of the street that is in between the two parking lots, and I can't think of the name of the street where Starbucks is. Is that Sylvan? That street is as equally bad shape as the upper left-hand corner there, and the sidewalks as well. So I realize it's not part of the scope, but maybe we could extend it just that much to do just that block. It would be horrible to have these beautiful parking lots paved and have the sidewalks all broken up in the street right there. It's really bad, so I would like to do that. And then I know one of the things I'd like us to keep our eye out for, and I know you've done it and are diligent about it, but I would like us to make sure we keep looking for grants for doing charging stations for cars, and any place we could put them in the parking lots. And again, I realize it's not part of this scope, but it's something that I think we need to be looking at.
Other questions or comments from Marty? Oh, I apologize. Thank you, Marty.
I was just going to say, in the years past, I've seen a lot of paving done in San Bruno, and I'm always concerned with sometimes the sloppiness that gets done. And I think that I don't always necessarily think that the best price is always the best, or is it the best product that you get out of. So I just want to make sure that we're going forward, if we do that with O'Grady, and that they do provide a very good and clean job. And what I mean by that is that if you go around to some of the neighborhoods where some recent paving jobs have, the edges are sloppy, they don't come over enough to a clean edge, and then what happens is the asphalt starts breaking away, and before you know it, you've got holes in the asphalt, and it deteriorates with the rains. As soon as there's any cracks, they get bigger and bigger with the rain. So I want to make sure that we're making the best decision. And I know we always look at price, and price is the big thing, but I want to make sure based on the second best, I guess, would say, whoever that might be, quality product, and that we're spending a lot of money on something that we're getting a good job. And then my other question would be that on a lot like Sylvan Lot, is that just a slurry that's needed, or is that something that you're going to grind up too as places to save money? Where we have maintained it, it looks like a decent sized lot that, where lot 5 definitely needs to be grinded and repaved, and the cost of that is much greater.
Slurry seals are much cheaper than having to mill and fill, and currently we don't have any plans to do the 3 lots that are shown there, that's Sylvan, Angus, and Masson at this moment, but it's something that we can actually include for the next fiscal year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Marty?
I liked all the questions. Just wanted to add, I guess, an overhanging question, is that at some point, maybe in this parking study that we're getting from downtown, we're going to be told that we need to get a parking structure. And the parking structure would be probably located in lot 5 and lot 4 here. So my concern is with this additional development that is coming downtown, and we already have a problem with the parking downtown, and we're waiting for this report to pretty much conclude that we need to do something else about parking downtown. that we're going to spend a good amount of that paving lots 4 and 5, and we're going to, I'm hoping soon, within the next couple years, start looking at how we're going to put a parking structure there where it's desperately needed. And clearly, the other 3 lots, no problem, they need them. We're not going to be able to fit a parking structure in that little area, but the area north of Sylvan definitely is a great location to put a parking structure. So talking to the paving contractor, maybe there is an alternative, cheaper treatment, like a cape seal of some kind, where you go ahead and just to see what they think. They're the experts, you know? And yeah, Lot 5 is horrible. It's going to even be worse because currently it's being used as part of a laydown. Or I'm sorry, Lot 4 would be part of the laydown area for the contractor who's working downtown, so it's just going to get worse. But I'm looking further down the road of this parking structure that we got to have. We need a parking structure. So I'd like to let staff know that I'm totally for this project, but I'm just concerned about those lots that are clearly where a parking structure would go, which has been identified in, I believe, some golden shovel, the program we had where we were trying to identify where this parking structure would go, and it just makes sense. It's a really nice big area. So I'd like to hear your comments on that and maybe how we can try to maybe award the contract, but just wait till this report that is hopefully going to come soon of the downtown parking management plan. I think that's what it is, right?
I'm not sure of the status on the parking. That's something that, you know, maybe the city manager.
Yeah, I guess the question is whether the council wants to provide direction to delay award of contract or start of work in order to accommodate further consideration of whether or not to pave one or more of those parking lots. We can certainly look at whether in a less expensive treatment is possible. That could be done as a change to the existing award of the contract. But I guess the question is really whether you're asking us to defer the actual award of the contract or the start of construction. And if so, we'd appreciate specific direction as to that interest.
Yes, Marty.
I'm in favor of the project, to award the project, but to consult the contractor for those larger lots. And it could be done with the change order, or maybe they'll come back and say, you know what, that lot is so hammered that there's really nothing else we can do. It is in horrible condition. It is only going to get worse. So I'm just hoping, and maybe you could please provide a date when this parking management downtown plan is going to be, because when I went to the public meeting regarding that plan, I think it was kind of like clear that we needed to do something. There's not enough parking downtown and in the surrounding neighborhoods, and how are we going to put cars downtown without a parking structure? So if that helps clarify anything that
What you were thinking? Okay, so from the conversation with the council, I've heard of just about looking at utilities while we're doing that. Also, Irene brought up about the Sylvan, the one block of that area, and also being mindful of continuing to look for grants for charging stations, which would be nice to have, I agree. Laura's bringing up about the conditions and quality of the finished work on the product, wanting to ensure its longevity as well as the investment that we're having. And then finally, Marty has brought up in regards to the parking structure, and what I'm hearing is council wanting to know whether we're talking about delaying or removing 1 or 2 lots. And I know Marty had suggested awarding the contract, but get their consulting for about the larger lots. Any thoughts from council?
Through the chair.
Michael?
Could we get just a completely ballpark estimate, maybe from Mr. Waltering or Connie, if you want to take a stab at it? If we were to say, yes, we absolutely need a parking structure downtown, we decided that today, how long would it be until we were actually putting a shovel in the ground?
If you were to decide right now today and you had the location and you own the property and you're literally ready to go, I would say construction would be, 18 months, 2 years maybe?
Yeah.
But we're not anywhere near any of those threshold dates. So I would say realistically, we're looking 3 to 5 years.
Okay.
At the minimum.
That's the
Yeah.
number I was looking for. So if we got 3 to 5 years of life out of these parking lots, I think we'd be in pretty good shape. So I like the way you're thinking, Marty, because we do need to look at our projects more strategically and more, we need to consider not just what we're doing in the next couple of years, but what we're doing in the next 10 years, the next 20 years. And so we definitely do need to look at that. But I think if we got, if we could count on, 5 years of use out of these lots, I think I would still be in favor of moving forward now, rather than trying to delay that. I like the other comments too, charging stations. I don't know if that requires infrastructure, possibly, underneath the asphalt, and definitely the quality of the work. Since we're doing one at a time, we have an ability to evaluate how it's going and get some course correction. And it also reminded me that we always want to remind our contractors to be tidy in what they're doing and be respectful of the neighborhoods that they're impacting. So dust control and all that is important.
Irene or Laura, you have any thoughts or comments from
Through the chair, I was
summary?
going to
Laura?
comment make that same comment, Michael. So I agree. I mean, I think you're looking at a parking structure, it's at least 5 years out. I think the comments that I made regarding quality, I think it's and Marty, Michael, great point. As each of these lots get completed, I think we need to ensure the quality of it. And so I think some of the other comments I think the biggest one I want to really tackle is also the charging station. Other cities have charging stations. I mean, this is coming, and cars are coming. I mean, I don't know at some point if you can buy a car sometime in the near future that's not electric. So we need to get on the forefront. So how much digging up once you've paved a parking lot is it going to be required to put in the required wiring and electricity that needs?
Actually, if you would entertain the director to comment for just a minute,
Please.
we do have some information you might be interested in the charging station.
Please,
idea.
Mr. Tan.
Yeah, so last year, and there was an interest by CCAG to try to get a group of various different agencies to participate in a possible grant for the electrical these charging stations. So we did participate in that, but we haven't heard anything back from CCAG yet. But we've been contacted by this company, EVgo. It's a national company. And they've installed these electrical charging stations for other member agencies. They recently completed one for City of St. Carlos at their library. And they've also partnered with other businesses as well to install their units. So the way it works is that they will contract directly with the city. It will be like a 10 years lease agreement, and they'll set up everything. So they'll come and they'll install their charging units. They'll do all of the permitting. They'll do the construction, the design, and they'll coordinate everything with PG&Es. And the only stipulation is that the city would have to provide a space for them to install their unit. But that's something that we're still discussing internally, whether or not it's, what's really in it for the city here if we're given a space, or there has to be some sort of a benefit in return. And so that's something that we're we're trying to determine in-house whether we want to move forward with that or not at this moment.
There's the additional concern that this is obviously a private company. They're in presumably a for-profit business. And so what would we need or want to do with respect to providing other similar companies the same opportunity and then determining what would be the best available? I mean, we can certainly provide public property for a private use under certain situations. Would we want to also consider doing some sort of open solicitation process so we were evaluating alternative proposals for that kind of use? And we can talk further internally about whether and how to make the timing work. I think there might be a possibility that we could look into that further and coordinate that with the paving of the parking lots if the council is interested.
Irene, did you have anything else?
Yeah, I'm interested.
Okay.
There's interest.
We knew that.
Yes, I still would like to see if we could pave that piece of Sylvan. Is that possibility to add to that? Do you think the cost would be prohibitive? Would that be a change order?
It will be a change order. And one thing that I would also mention is we're trying to improve the infrastructure, beyond the San Mateo Avenue as well. So we have another project that we're currently on. It's on hold, just getting ready to bid until this project for San Mateo Avenue is completed. We're calling the avenues 1-1, 1-2, where we're replacing the water and sewer pipelines, all along this, the Huntington, San Mateo, the Triangle area, all the way down to Taylor in Florida. So all the water and sewer lines will be replaced within the entire neighborhood, and Sylvan is part of that. And once the pipelines are replaced, the roads will be repaved as part of that project. So we can proceed with doing paving of this roadway now, but then we would have to tear it up within a year or
Oh,
a
no,
year and a
that's
half.
fine.
Yeah.
No. I'm just would make, I'm happy to hear that, and
Yes.
I look forward to it when it's all completed. Thank you. Oh, and so when you're doing that, would you please add the sidewalks on both those places as well? On that piece of Sylvan, the sidewalks entering the parking lot to the south side of Sylvan, I forgot which number it is badly damaged.
We know which block it is.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Marty?
I'd like to introduce a resolution, as noted in the report, with a little modification of just asking the contractor to reevaluate what else could be done with those other lots, instead of just a grind and overlay.
Did we also want to include about the sidewalks? The Councilmember O'Connell just brought up in the resolution or no?
No.
Oh, excuse me, that they can do when they're
With the
doing
change order, okay.
the other
When they
piece.
do the-
So that's
Got it.
fine.
No, she's talking about the sidewalks. Right. Not the street.
Yeah, that would be later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when they,
So there is the resolution that's been introduced with the modification to it to go back and ask if there is a cheaper methodology for the couple of lots that it has a potential in a period of time from now to have a parking structure. Did I summarize that all right? Mark, does that work? Vicki?
Councilmember Medina,
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell,
I'm going to vote no on that. I want the project to go through, but I don't think that piece is necessary. So I'm going to vote no on, I guess I have to vote no on all of it.
Okay.
Councilmember Salazar,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Davis,
Aye.
Mayor Medina.
Aye. Okay.
Chair?
Councilmember
Just
Salazar.
one point of clarification on that. So, Jimmy, when you go back and talk to the contractor, if they say that there is some cheaper option, are you going to bring that back to us, or would we just assume that you will go with a cheaper option
We
based
will-
on what we just...
We will report back to you, but
Okay.
if it can be done within the budget and the contract costs that you've just approved, we would assume that we have your direction to do it.
Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you.
Everything good? Okay. Comments from council members? Do you have any things, folks? Okay. On closed session, we are going to continue our closed session from earlier and have a public employee performance evaluation for the city attorney pursuant to Government Code Section 54957. Everybody enjoy your evening, and we will adjourn to the next regular city council meeting held on 27th. Thank you.